Minister, I'd just like to ask for an update in relation to the great big idea, which is the Land Development Agency that was announced by yourselves. How many what land has actually been transferred to the agency to date? And if you could maybe provide an update with regard to legislation in this regard, because it raised at committee just before the recess this issue that effectively the LDA isn't set up on a legal footing yet. So maybe you could provide us an update, please.
Minister, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Lass, and thank you, Deputies, for the question. I propose to take questions 37 and 225 together. On establishment, the Land Development Agency had access to an initial tranche of 8 sites that have near-term delivery potential for 3,000 new homes. The sites concerned are as follows: the Central Mental Health Hospital site in Dundrum, Hampton in Balbriggan, Hackettstown in Skerries, Devoy Barracks in Naas, former Meath Hospital, Dublin City Centre, St Kevin's Hospital, Cork, Column Barracks in Mullingar and Dyke Road in Galway. The ownership of 7 of the sites will not formally transfer to the LDA until the Land Development Agency Bill is enacted, while the site in Galway is owned by Galway City Council and will be developed on a partnership basis. It is intended that the bill be published and brought before the Oireachtas later this year. Indeed, the Joint Committee, of which the Deputy is a member, will be conducting pre-legislative scrutiny on the bill very shortly. The LDA is also working with Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown County Council on a delivery plan for a site at Shangana. Notwithstanding that the legislation has not yet been finalised, the LDA is already working on these initial sites made available to them. While passing the LDA legislation is a priority, it is not preventing the LDA from progressing these sites. In addition, because the sites are public lands rather than lands in private ownership, the issue of ownership and transfer is not an obstacle to early progress. The LDA is entering into pre-sale agreements with the landowners as appropriate to ensure that it has full access to the sites to carry out necessary pre-construction activities. Significant preparatory work is underway, with feasibility and planning work already initiated, and the first planning application is due to be submitted later this year. Construction activity is envisaged to commence on some of the sites by the middle of next year, subject to the granting of planning permissions, with the first homes due to be completed by the end of next year. Thank you.
This is a bit of a fantasy answer, actually. What we've got in response is that no land has been transferred to the LDA at all. It's not likely anything will. You're saying you hope you have the legislation through pretty quickly. You'd probably want to hurry up if that's actually what you want to do. Could I talk to you just by way of example? For Castle Lands in Balbriggan, we're effectively a situation there whereby the local authority is rushing through a master plan in advance of a potential transfer of the land to the Land Development Agency, where they produced a master plan over and above the heads of residents there, with completely an over-intensification of the site, inappropriate housing, basically a rushed plan, because they want to get it done before the land is transferred to the LDA. So if this is to be the vehicle that is to deliver housing at a mass scale, it certainly is a very slow-moving vehicle. What I would ask as well in the legislation, I had to read reports in the newspapers over the summer, that some of the staff within the LDA had actually said that they wouldn't be subject to the Lobbying Act. Now, who are they to decide whether they're subject to the Lobbying Act or not? That's actually for the Oireachtas to decide, one would have thought, and for us to decide by way of legislation. So is it your intention that the Land Development Agency and in the legislation would be subject to the Lobbying Act? Because if it's not, I just want to put you on notice that I'll be tabling amendments to that legislation whenever it's published to make sure that it is.
Ministers, 1 minute.